Hey everyone, welcome to my second interview here with a wonderful person that I met while I was working on the line for that short period of time. I'd like to introduce you guys to Captain Gabriel Di Nota. However, he's not flying as a captain at this moment because of the pandemic, but I'll let him explain the reason why. But Gabe, I'd like to welcome you to my podcast and thank you for the time that you're taking to really discuss, what you do, what your role is with the company, and what your role is specifically with the union. Gabriel is the vice chair for the union. It's my first experience with the union as well, and I'm very excited to kind of share with everybody what my other passion is when it comes to aviation. It's such an incredible. Anybody who flies or gone flying or sat in the flight deck or a cockpit before, they understand. What a intricate job we have and such a cool view that we get. The panoramic views that we get to see. It's just amazing. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. It's great. It's an honor to be here. I fondly remember our flights together, so it's an honor and a privilege to be here, and I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah. So just a bit background. Um, Gabe was actually one of my training captains when I first started on the line. And I think instantly, like when we kind of met each other, it was like an instant, like, yeah, I like this guy, you know what I mean, type of thing. So we shared some good laughs, some good stories. Obviously, I was still learning, so you definitely, were helping me out, showing me a lot of things, taking the time to really, help me along with my learning as well. So again, it was just such a wonderful privilege to meet somebody, that really took the time and understood what it's like to be in that position too, right? I feel like sometimes, once you've become kind of like an expert in your field, you look at people now and you're like, Jesus, why aren't you getting it? And it's like we need to remember what it's like to train and to be in that position. So I really appreciated that a lot, and that's why when I thought about bringing you on, it was just like, yeah, I gotta have you on, right? So so again, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's I think that was it's during during my whole even career and we'll call it doing being a training captain, only doing training for a long period of time. I think that very quickly became very important to a lot of people, especially me. Was you remember where you came from? You remember how difficult that process was, and how difficult it was just to come out of the sim and then say, "Here you go fly," and you don't know what to expect. You don't know, you know, you're brand new, and that's daunting for a lot of people, and pilots especially. You're used to you're used to being in charge. Pilots are always used to being in charge. So you throw them into a new environment and it's almost like guards go up. So to have that open environment, to have that nurturing environment where you can facilitate quality training and quality experiences, I think that's really what my main priority was during my time as a trainer. um, I think also, and then to go back to where you and I connected, was it just felt like kind of similar backgrounds. Felt like we just had a kind of an instant bond, and that's a good thing to have. In
Yeah.
one way, it's a very good thing to have, and then in
Mhm.
another instance, it's you have to be cautious with the safety implications of having such a good and open bond there, because you
Yeah.
can forget things. So, but yeah,
100%.
I fondly remember our training, and it was yeah, it was a highlight for me for sure.
Yeah, and for me as well. So yeah, just a great time and a lot of learning and a lot of just learning about, especially when I found out that you're the vice chair for the union as well. I did have some questions, obviously, and learning about that was first time exposed to being part of a union as well.
Yeah.
And actually, if you don't mind, explaining kind of what your role is with the union and what you guys do for the pilots in general, right?
Yeah, so I'll give you kind of a maybe a 30,000 foot overview of the position,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word. But
Right.
so the two bases have, or if there are multiple bases, pilot bases, they'll have their elected reps,
Hmm.
your local reps. So in our case, we have Calgary and Toronto as bases. the pilots directly elect their representatives. Obviously, it's amongst the pilot group, and then from those individuals, captain or first officer, they will then elect a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary treasurer position. Really, the our position on, we call it the Master Executive Council, is to conduct the day-to-day operations of the union for our airline. So my role specifically deals with running our various committees. So we have, a negotiations committee, a grievance committee, a safety committee, all sorts of committees that are staffed with incredible volunteers, who conduct business on behalf of the pilot group. So my role is really to kind of cater to their needs, and to also assist in the chair's daily functions. The chair is the one that's interacting with our company representative, daily, for different needs. So it's been an interesting journey so far. Well, especially through COVID, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But
Yeah.
um,
Oh yeah, I got some
how I got
questions.
into the role was was also very interesting too. But I'll let you continue with the questions before I start diving too deep into it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I mean, you brought it up. I guess for me, how has the union kind of adjusted to the pandemic? Essentially, like what, I know you're going to talk about the Wing Buddy program. I think is
Yeah,
that how it's pronounced, right? Uh,
wingman. Yep.
Wingman, yeah. And so that was cool. I was one of the pilots reached out to me as well. It was great. We had a great conversation. I also communicated to you that I'm kind of a little uneasy about getting the vaccine right off the bat, and
Yeah.
I don't want to create any conflict or anything. I have always been a vaccinated person. I worked medevac, so I've gotten all the shots in the past. But I'm just a little uneasy. So, for other pilots, for example, that might share the same kind of sentiment in regards to that, maybe you can explain that as well. And yeah, exactly, like how you had to adjust specifically through the pandemic.
Yeah, so it was very interesting. So I remember fondly, even talking about where aviation was in 2019. Early 2019 was, we were in the busiest period of our history. Essentially, airlines were flying more than they've ever flown, were hiring more than they've ever hired, and
Yeah.
it felt like in the matter of a week that all stopped, and we were outside of hiring mode and getting into job protection mode, which is usually there's some sort of warning, or usually you have some sort of warning. So my role, I
Yeah.
wasn't in the role that I am now, but I was well enough involved that it was all of a sudden shifted from a pilot retention issue
Mm.
to a pilot retention issue on the other side, is how do we protect jobs
Yeah.
for this uncertain period of time. So I remember in April, you know, our company approached the union and said, well, this is what we're seeing. And we were seeing, negative bookings. And when you see negative bookings, it's, alarm bells go off.
Yeah. Panic
And
mode.
it was, yeah, flights being canceled,
Hmm.
daily restrictions, government restrictions changing.
Yeah.
And we had to get, I also remember a conversation we had with our company saying, if you have any members that are overseas in another country on vacation, tell them to get home. Like,
Yeah.
that's how kind of hectic things were and
Dire the
crazy things
situation.
were.
Yeah.
So we very quickly shifted from, okay, how do we steer the conversation about how do we retain pilots at our company and hire, to how do we save jobs? And that was
Yeah.
very difficult, especially with,
Mm.
our operation is, we're generally a younger pilot group. So it's pilots want to progress. They wanted to go to other places, other airlines. So we had not a big volunteer group at the union, and so the key group of individuals very quickly, um, work with our head office and at the union, and very quickly kind of engage the company to try and save jobs, essentially. And I
Yeah.
know we all took pretty serious pay reductions for a month, just
Yep.
so that we could understand really what was happening, because really nobody knew. We were
Hmm.
trying to understand how long was, what first of all, what's COVID? What are the
Yeah.
restrictions? How long is
Yeah.
this going to last? How do we get out of this?
How
And
serious
we
is it?
were
Yeah.
yeah, we were a month into the conversation, and we didn't know.
Hmm.
So that first month was really critical, and what at least saving jobs for that first month really allowed us to do is come up with a game plan for at least what was going to happen 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
And that conversation quickly turned into, this is not a 2-3 month thing. This is going to be a long term issue. And by long term, we didn't know if it was the 0 to 6 month or the 6 to 12 month or the post 1 year mark, but we
Yeah.
knew that there was going to be some changes and there was going to be a shift. And I think our ability to stay liquid, our ability to stay, kind of roll with the punches is probably what really helped us we'll say get through, because we're not through yet, but really to
Yeah.
navigate those challenges.
Yes.
Um, and we did have a very, unified pilot group. We are all pulling in one direction. People had confidence in the ability of, number one, the company to make the right decisions, but the unit to lead them through that. And I think we navigated through it as well as we could have. Sure, looking back, there's things that maybe we could have done better on both sides. So,
For
but
sure.
just that being able to adapt as, number one, a union rep, but also that translates well into what a pilot does. You're able to adapt to different situations, and that's really what we did. We were faced with a challenge, and we tried to solve the challenge with the information we had. So
Yes. Yeah. No, for sure. And actually, like I touched base on it earlier, and like, you're not currently a captain. So
yeah.
can you explain to the folks at home, how what happened? How did we have to adjust? What the company had to do when they did come to you? They said, okay, this is what's happening. This is what we're going to do. And with our seniority list, because that's also like for me, like I'm bottom of the seniority list, so
Yeah.
that also will affect me as well as far as being called back, right? But explain to what happened in your situation. You know what I mean? Going from a captain to becoming a first officer again.
Yeah, for sure. So quickly, when we got layoff notices company wide. They anticipated what positions needed to be filled per seat, so captain and first officer across the different aircraft types that we had, and essentially whatever your seniority could hold, you could slot into. So in my case, I've been a captain for, let's call it, 2.5 years, and then my seniority wasn't enough to hold that captain spot in Toronto. In my case, and I was able to hold a first officer spot, not by much, by I think it was even like 20 spots. So
Wow.
fortunate enough to even hold a position, considering how many layoffs we had.
Oh yeah.
But there was, individuals who had been captains for even 5 years, um, who couldn't hold a captain spot. So really,
Crazy.
seniority is everything in this game,
Yeah.
and just couldn't hold it. More thankful to have a job. In my case, and I'll be quite open and honest with it, I had some medical issues, so I basically flew about a month and a half as a first officer before I went on medical leave,
Oh
and so I really haven't been flying as a first officer for very much. So if you asked me to fly right now, I would say I need to go back in the sim. But
yeah.
that in itself affects a lot of people. That when they're used to being a captain and then being downgraded, that takes a mental toll on people. That took a mental toll on our pilots. Even individuals that were on other equipment who are coming down to fly smaller equipment, that takes a mental toll.
100%.
It's
Yeah.
almost like a shot in the gut. And then there's the people that say, well, you should be thankful, and you should. Everyone is going to experience it differently,
Yes.
and this affected everybody differently. And I think that's another message that I think is very important, is that it affected you, Frank, differently than it affected Gabe, and it doesn't make one less significant than the other.
Yeah.
It affected us pretty hard and differently.
Yeah, like I mean, since you're bringing it up, and just the idea of this podcast too, like mental health issues is very important. It's very important, obviously, to talk about it and also to acknowledge it, right? And as you touched based on it, how did it affect pilots from when you were actually around and flying on the line again? Like, how did you see people really reacting to this, and how do you think they were coping?
Yeah, so I think our group especially, and even just industry wide, I think is probably we can speak on, is 2019. We're looking at there was great opportunities. You got into the industry, and you were, Canada wide, even North America wide, there was pilot shortages. You're looking at, quick upgrades from first officer to captain, lots of opportunities, whether you wanted to get into training. And then all of a sudden it felt surreal. It almost felt like, how does something like this happen? This is the worst thing that has ever happened to our industry. And there was people that have spouses in aviation as well. So just that alone, where there was that moment of, I can't believe this is happening
Yeah.
to the industry. Then there's the moment of, I can't believe this is happening to me or my family. And then
Mhm.
it's, I can't believe this is happening to my friends too, right? Because a lot of us have friends in aviation. So those
Yes.
traditional outlets that you'd go to, a lot of people were, going to work, and you can see, visibly upset. Passengers visibly upset.
Yeah.
Your crew member obviously visibly upset, and it's almost felt like that environment that was so nurturing in a way, because you had that career progression,
Yeah.
immediately turned into a toxic workplace, not because of the people, it's just because of the environment that we were in.
Yeah.
And that took a huge toll. And, we talked about people being downgraded and people being in positions that they didn't really want to be in. But I think the also, just a general, how COVID affected aviation is, and people's families,
Yeah.
really, really does take that toll on individuals. And then not knowing where or when things are going to get better, if they're going to get better. Um, so, in the role as the union, I think it was our job. It had to be, whether we liked it or not, it was going to be our job to make sure that our pilots understood that no matter what happened, we were going to be there for you
Mhm.
individually and the
Yeah.
pilot group. It wasn't even about, okay, how do we get better working conditions at that point? It was just how to make sure that people go to work and they're safe. And
Yeah.
that's how quickly the conversation changed. So, um, and then, thankfully, it seems like we're kind of coming out of COVID in a lot of places.
Yeah.
And I don't want to speak too soon about that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
it does seem like now we're talking about mental health on the way out. It's now things are starting to ramp up, and how does that affect someone's mental health? You're used to working, let's call it maybe 10 days a month. Now you're going up to 18.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to affect what you've been used to. And maybe some people are uneasy about actually flying that much.
Mhm.
There's a whole other conversation now as we come out of this that we're going to have to address as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's kind of, I kind of wanted to parlay that into, so during that time, the wingman program, for example,
Yep.
introducing that. Thankfully, I was still getting the communication emails from the union as well, and actually, just to kind of touch on that, um, I saw the pay increase for you guys now this for July, right? So that's exciting. Exactly, like hopefully this is kind of
Yep.
foreshadowing the future. I'm going to ask you a question a little bit later, though, and
Sure.
just to see. But I also just wanted to make a comment about our company in general, and we're not going to mention it for sure. But I'm very proud to at least be a part of the company that really navigated through this. I was still able to collect some paycheck, at least something. Where I know our competitors, I know some people from, you know what I mean, and we won't go
Yep.
there either, but where they were left in the dark, you know what I mean? And so I really just want to, be thankful and grateful for the fact that at least it helped me. Yeah, we had to scramble. In my situation, I had to scramble. I was left homeless. I had to get a full time job, going back, and nobody wanted to hire me. This is a sad reality. People were telling me I was overqualified. And just because I'm a pilot, but that doesn't mean that I'm good at everything. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I'm flattered, thank you, but I'm also humble and I want to learn and give me the opportunities. But nobody wanted to hire me because we talked about it. We didn't know how long this was going to last. We didn't know if it was going to be 6 months to a year. Now we're already over a year, and people now still don't want to hire me. So like I'm a temp worker right now. It's been absolutely crazy. And I can only imagine for all our colleagues and everybody in this industry, what we've had to do to kind of scramble to, and it's a great point that you mentioned about people that are actually married with other people in the same industry. So that's devastating in my opinion. Like,
Yeah.
so hopefully, people were, I'm sure they were, because we're a resilient group. You know what I mean? I obviously being around pilots, like you said, we love that control, aspect of life. And I know that most of us are good. You know what I mean? But it is tough. But just to go back real quick, what kind of programs and that you were helping out to kind of get, people, just kind of showing that you guys are there and supporting us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think very early on, the communication piece was very important because we identified that a lot of people um, were our company and our pilot group is newer to the union than a more seasoned pilot group is, because we have pilot groups in North America that have been unionized for a very long time. And so for us, it was just identifying, okay, what are we here for?
Mm.
Especially during COVID was very important for us just to keep the communication going. I think at one point we had communications daily because information was changing. We got information uh, during the day from our company, and then at night from the government, and then we're trying to navigate that. So we did communication daily for I think about two months. Um, Whether it is a form of an email communication or other forms. Um, but what really so the communication piece was really key. The other thing we tried to do right away was that government affairs piece. So we identified the need to be active on the government affairs side, and
Yeah.
what that was through a government affairs rep. Our association has great government affairs resources, but there was a lot more that we could do at a local, our airline level, plus working with our company to how do we, like, we're all navigating the same thing. So, how do we
Yeah.
collaborate and work together? The third thing we identified was the safety aspect, and I'll say third, but I think there's a fourth piece in that as well. And it
Okay.
really is, I think that's secondary, but that third piece is really the safety, mental health aspect. So
Yes. Huge.
very early on, we said we need to have a robust support system for our laid off pilots.
Mm.
Our wingman program wasn't instituted right away because we had lots of other channels where people were getting information from. But that wingman program was really just designed so that someone who was laid off from the airline was still felt like they were being supported by the union. Because you getting money doesn't mean that you're okay. It
Yeah.
just means that,
Exactly.
hey, the government is helping you because of how difficult this has
Yeah.
been. But
Yeah.
even those programs, like for the longest time, the wage subsidy would be passed or was sitting in limbo, and the company didn't communicate because they didn't know. It's not it's no fault of their own, because they didn't know where the government was sitting. So it made our job very difficult to say, hey Frank, yeah, you actually you can kind of rest easy for the next month or two, because you're gonna have whatever it was 847 a week, and then it turned into $500 a week.
Yeah. I know.
And I think that caused a lot of stress for people too. But
Definitely
that
did. Yeah.
wingman program, I think was very key. Just to check in, have a
Yeah.
pilot, one of your friends check in on you,
Mm.
and just say, hey, how's it going? And it really wasn't supposed to be let's talk about gossip or let's talk about rumors. It's just, how are you?
Yeah.
As simple as the question is. And I think that fourth piece for us, being in the union, was actively negotiating. I think that's a very important piece to add to this, because we did have to creatively find ways to protect jobs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. For
I
sure.
think this is the blessing of being a union right now. And I'm not raw union, even in the position that I'm in. And I'll say it 1,000 more times. But our job is not to punish. Our job is to protect the best interest of our pilots in this case.
For sure.
And we have to work very collaboratively with our company, and we did. And we saved as many jobs as we possibly could. Plus, we're also, you know, keeping those who are actively working with their seniority on a livable wage. Because for one job you save, someone else's, either someone else is laid off, or for if you save an excess of jobs, it means the group that's on property is taking, a significant pay hit
Yeah.
to the already decreased salary that you're taking when you downgrade from a captain to a first officer. So that was a challenge, but I'm proud of the work that we did. I think what really I'm the most proud of is the fact that I really feel like we communicated, tried to communicate frequently, and we really do care about our members and the well being of them. And that wingman program, I'm pretty proud of it. So
Yeah, I thought it was a great idea, and you touched on it as well, where you wanted to make us pilots laid off feel like we're that we're still part of it essentially, right? So yeah,
yeah,
I definitely appreciated that. The communication was very important too. Because with our company, we were stripped of our iPads or any of the COMs, the training materials, the PTMs, whatever pilot training materials, anything that was
yeah,
related to like being staying current or anything, like they completely ripped it apart from us, right? So, but that's okay. It's understandable, right? They need to protect their software, that sort of thing too, and
yeah,
so it was nice that the union did that for us. I think also knowing that you guys negotiated a deal where our jobs were protected for 10 years, definitely that was great as well. And it was something that there is a stigma about unions. You know what I mean? And so it's nice to know that, yeah, you guys are definitely there to help us out and protect your jobs. You're there helping the group. You know what I mean? And also, I love the event that we did. We managed to get it off last year when we went to the hockey game there, the
yeah.
Marlies. It was great because as a new employee as well, I just wanted to make myself present. I just wanted to be, introduce myself, rub shoulders with, the head guys, I guess you can say. You know what I mean? Like you guys are, but everybody was wonderful. I met a lot of great people, a lot of other great captains, and Patrick, right? He's the head guy there. He's such a really
Yeah.
nice, educated man. He's a lawyer too, right?
That's James.
Oh, so James. Okay, and I got to
Yeah,
rub shoulders with him too. He was hilarious. You know what I mean? A great group of people. You know what I mean? And just having everybody being supportive with each other and asking questions, like just hey, if you have shoot me a message, whatever. You know what I mean? It was just such an amazing event. Bringing our kids too. Well, I brought my kids, and not everybody has children.
yeah.
But just having that opportunity, just kind of relax, lay loose. You know what I mean, and just enjoy, something that you guys put on for us. You know what I mean, which is great, right? And so I really appreciate those kind of things. One thing I was going to ask you, I don't know if this is going to, put us in trouble there, but did the company
Oh, that's
ever
okay.
Now, did the company ever come to you guys and really put you guys in a headlock and saying, "Hey, we're doing this, and like it or not, we're doing this." You know what I mean? And how do you guys deal with that? If the company did do that, or hypothetically speaking, if they were to do that, how would you guys react to those kind of situations?
Yeah, so I'll say I won't confirm or deny if they have or haven't done that, but if that ever came into if that was a situation, and I'll
Mhm.
speak on just in my knowledge of unions and the role that I'm in, I think I can speak for generally
Yeah.
unions and a company relationship. There are tools at a union's disposal to prevent that kind of action from happening. And if they do happen, there are things union can do in the aftermath. So, um, though in COVID, again, I think I spoke with before. Our role isn't to be punitive. Our role isn't to be vindictive against the
Yes.
company. It's really have to understand that especially as pilots, we're very um, our role is to fly. And like you said earlier, it's not like we can go. I can't go get a job and be a lawyer. I can't. We're very
Mhm.
specialized. So it is in our best interest to ensure that our company that we chose to work at is also successful going
Yes.
forward. So
It's a great
we
point.
also acknowledge that there are certain things that a company has to do in order to stay
Afloat. Yeah.
successful, so that we have a job.
Exactly.
Um, so, and there could be times where a company does have to do that, and a union in general or a company has to do that. The union in general might not like that, and the company might know that they don't that the union's not going to like that, and they're going to expect a response from a
Yeah.
union, and that's kind of I call it that's part of the
Yeah.
game. But there are tools at a union's disposal to deal with that.
Okay.
So I think during COVID, um, our company was very transparent as to what was happening. Sure, there were challenges, no different than I would say 95% of the businesses at the time. But through open and honest communication, no different than in the flight
Yeah.
deck, you have open and honest communication. You keep those lines open. I think we can navigate that pretty successfully, and I think we did. There really wasn't a time that we felt like we didn't know what was happening because our company did communicate that with us, and that we were able to share that with you, as the membership.
Yeah.
So I think that answers the question as politically as
Yeah,
I
no,
possibly
for
can.
sure. Like I said, like definitely want to protect both our jobs. You know what I mean? I'm very proud to work for my
Yeah,
company. To be honest with you, I have really nothing. I'm not going to bash anybody or anything like that. I feel like they have communicated, even through emails and just through their ad campaigns and that sort of thing as well.
yeah,
My dad is a frequent flyer as well. He told me that he was getting letters from them, emails, sorry, from them, about the changing situations and that sort of thing. So again, I don't, and it's understandable, right? Like you got to use some common sense. The company was put in a pinch too, right? They had to survive. They were
yeah.
treading in very deep waters, and so, just to hear how you guys were able to work together and understand that, and, understand that we both need to survive. You know what I mean? You're protecting jobs as best as you can, but the company also has to protect the bottom line at the end of the day. Like, I feel like we lose our company. That's a big part of Canada, a big part of our industry that really disappears. So, if anything, I really appreciate the fact that they've navigated this with very minimal government support, by the way, nudge,
Yeah.
nudge. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So, um, you know, but at the same time, too, I think my view on it as well is like, you know what? Sometimes we do rely on other people or other things. You know what I mean? I'm just happy to see that we've been able to navigate this without so much support. You know what I mean? So, I'm really super excited, and I'm excited about the future. And this kind of ties into my next question now. So I know a few of my colleagues have now gotten emails from the company saying that they're able to now get access to the training manuals and the company operation manuals, that sort of thing. So can you kind of enlighten me? Maybe give me a heads up with any news potentially. Is this a good sign? Is this something that I could be, you know, kind of starting to really get ready to get back to work, perhaps, or just even anyway, just fill me in.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's definitely, with the restrictions that the government has lifted as recently as I think it's the other day. Industry wide, it seems like bookings are going in the right direction. It seems like pent up travel, is starting to come back. Yeah,
Excellent.
there is this concern about the Delta variant, but our vaccination rates are up, and we can speak about vaccinations later.
Yeah.
But it seems like people are starting to be more eager to fly, which has put us in a position where we're obviously in a business of selling airplanes or selling tickets. So seems like we need the pilots. So I'll speak industry wide. It looks we're in a much better spot than we were 6 months ago, and it seems like there's hope for further recalls. Um, Probably, speaking on behalf of us, I don't know, but industry wide, it looks very promising. Obviously, every airline is going to have their different requirements based on what kind of agreements they've signed with their particular unions, but there definitely is hope. I think that's maybe the main message, is that we just announced that we're upgrading some first officers to captain. So things are definitely moving in the right direction, just by looking at industry trends. So I would get studying. Maybe by the end of the year, I don't want to make any promises. I don't have any inside information, but it sounds like, and it seems like, through all indications, that we're going in the right direction.
Okay. I mean, I guess I could push a little bit more.
Sure.
Do you have any idea maybe for August, for example, like if a small number, sorry, of pilots perhaps being called back for August already? You know what I mean? That sort of
Yeah, I
thing.
would say we're probably not looking into July or August or
Okay.
September. I would say, if I could be honestly, best guess would be, we'll call it October, November into December would
Okay.
be when I would think we'd hear more about next rounds. But things are moving quickly, so
Yeah. Things can change. Yeah, for sure.
things can change.
Now, I guess Now, this is kind of a little more personal to me now. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm still not 100% comfortable in taking the vaccine. Mind you, I'm fit. I keep a positive mentality, and I understand. I trust me. I'm well. I keep a good idea of and an open mind to everything that's going on. However, there might be some pilots such as myself that feel the same way. Returning back to work, having to be vaccinated when really, there isn't the long-term studies. Yes, I know that there has been a lot of short-term studies for sure. But, for me, it's just kind of the long-term effect. And I think it's an important point to mention, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like I'm not going to create any controversy here or anything like that.
Yeah.
But if there are pilots that do feel, the same way that I do, what can we expect if we were to return to work?
Yeah, so I think that the main message I would tell people is like you've said, is just do your research, do what you feel and is right for you, your family, and your situation. In terms of a union's position, I won't give our union's position or our company's position. I'm not going to speak on behalf of them. But that's the message that we've been sending: is do your research, and if you feel like it's necessary for you, and it's right for you or wrong for you, then you make that choice as you see fit for you, your family, and your situation. We will always advocate for our members' right to choose.
Yes.
That's very important for us. Now, I also preface this with there may be external factors outside of anybody's control. So we're calling government, you know, impose restrictions. We're an airline, so we fly, different provinces and different jurisdictions. For us, obviously, specifically, mostly concerned about the United States. So, are there any kind of concerns with, the United States mandating vaccines for aircrew? We haven't heard of anything yet. If we do, that's also what our government affairs, individual will be working on. But those are kind of some of the challenges that we face. We have kind of strict laws in Canada about what can and cannot be done.
Yeah.
So we're actively looking into it. We know that it really does come down to right now. Not there not being a lot of information that we can draw from, and we're not gonna it would be irresponsible for us to say, "Yeah, Frank, you have to have a vaccine." That's not what we're here for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nor do I think that's any company's position right now, or should be their position right now. But again, not speaking on behalf of them,
Yeah.
I'll just speak on behalf of at least the union right now. It's that
Yeah.
we would support everybody's right to choose, and I think we have to address it individually right now versus as a whole
Yeah.
pilot group. I think there's a lot more. Um, just a lot more questions than answers right now, and I think we'll probably get them sooner rather than later, especially as we get these you know more variants probably starting to come in, or as we get
Yeah. That's
into possibility of needing a third dose. So, um, but it's
crazy.
high on the list of things that we need to look at.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely it's reassuring for sure the answer. You know, because I think it is important to listen to everybody, right? Everybody's point of view, and work collectively and really just come up with the best solutions, right, together. And at the end of the day, that's kind of, really my concern is just really, you know, what's the best way of handling all this, right? And also I do want to return. You know what I mean? So if I do return and I have that opportunity to return, I shouldn't say if I have, when I have that opportunity,
When,
you know what I
yeah,
mean? It'll be interesting to know. So it's really good to hear kind of what the the position that the union is in regards to this, right? Because I'm sure there's other people like myself that kind of share the same sentiment, and then there's other people that are like, "Come on, let's get this over with, and let's move on." So
yeah, and even I even have been telling people about, even if they just think about a general medical leave, and I'll speak on, for me, because I'm on one right now. You have to. There's no one stop shop for that. So
mhm,
if you need a certain, for me it was, I can't fly for this reason. So I think the company in my case was very good with working with me for to be on leave. and then work with the union to do, what's the stand. So I think that's just how we have to handle it right now. Whereas it's a very individual choice right now and a very, very individual decision.
Yeah.
And we're going to do everything we can to look at, how do we get more information on, how do we provide you the information that you need.
Mm.
There's information on health agency websites, on the manufacturer of the vaccines websites, but also that's part of what we're doing and the company is doing as well, just to get that information so that we can share it with you, so that Frank can make the decision, or Gabe can make the decision.
Yeah. 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 For sure. Yeah. I know. I love it. I love it. No, really good. It's fantastic. It definitely, I'm looking forward. I still haven't received that email though from the company, so I feel like I'm getting gypped. But my last name is pretty far down on the list if we're going alphabetically, so
Yeah.
I can understand. But I'm excited to get my hand on the manuals again and start reading. Like I still have my cue cards for all the verbiage that we have to use in the flight deck
Yep.
there. So yeah, just reviewing that. The good thing is we've already gone through it once, so I think going back to it won't be too difficult. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to say it's easy. But at least you've gone through it once. It definitely is going to be easier the second time. And you know what? Actually, maybe you can talk about what training might look like for pilots that are going to be returning, such as myself, who were spent very little time with the company, and just literally finished my first, my initial training, and then I was just about to do my annual, like my what is it, biannual training, I guess you can say, or the
your
recurrent training. Yes, there you go. See, I'm already losing the aviation terms. It's been that long.
It's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of, describe the landscape of what training is going to look like now.
Yeah, so I think it's depends on how long you've been gone for. I think nobody's going to fall into the sequence of the full initial program, but everyone's going to be. I think most people are probably going to come back before that full initial will have to occur. So it's
Yeah.
going to look
Okay.
something like a week of that ground school in class, and it's actually virtually right now. So Hollywood Squares is what it's going to be.
Nice.
And I think
Love
it's
that.
about a week, depending on the airline. Combination of that, same kind of technical plus that CRM training, plus probably just a refresher on the operation. What's changed? What are the differences?
Yeah.
Some SOP changes if there have been any, and then they're probably going to be in some sort of a fixed-based trainer. So what we know as the GFS,
Yeah.
could be for 1 or 2 sessions, just to kind of refresh on what am I pushing, where are my hands going,
That's
type of
right.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are the calls before I have to actually go fly the thing? And then I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it's about 3 or 4 simulator sessions plus a PPC
You're
just to
right.
renew.
Yeah. Plus you
Yeah.
ride that at
So
the end.
but I think you also brought up a really good point about we're all pilots are professionals. Pilots show up prepared, and that's really what we're known for, and that falls in line with what the union stance is. Schedule with safety, um, and that's what's really important. And what we're going to see is what we don't want to see is that being lagged, or that training being pushed, because that's what the flying public trusts. Is they trust that you have 2 qualified pilots in the flight deck. Not
100%.
1, 2, and
Two.
that's
Yeah.
really what both the association considers acceptable, and I think the flying public has come to expect. And as
Of course.
professional pilots, that's what we expect on ourselves and our partner.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
I have no doubt that our pilots will come, and pilots in Canada and North America will come to their training events prepared and act professionally, because that's what we're known for. So
Yeah, and I think obviously the enthusiasm of returning to work is going to be a huge motivator for a lot of us. And yeah, I think we'll just be excited to be back in the flight deck. And let me tell you, folks, like it is so intimidating when you're looking at all the buttons. Your first time sitting in the simulator or in GFS, which is just kind of like a mock-up of the flight deck. And looking at the buttons, and you're like, I got to know all these buttons. And honestly, folks, you learn them. You do learn them. It takes some time, but you do learn what every little button does. And some of them you don't even push. Maybe you push once a month. You know what I mean? But not for the most part. You know them. there's a lot of fuses too all around us. So a lot of those buttons are actually fuses. So obviously you do need to know what the important ones are for sure. But it is intimidating, and it's such a cool, it was such a cool kind of just to go through that process and learning again, even at our age, right? As you get older, I think it kind of disproves the notion that you don't learn as you get older. And you look at pilots that are flying the latest aircraft now that are well and just about to retire. For example, with our company flying the Dreamliner, you know what I mean? Like pilots are constantly learning. And I think that's something that's good and relates well to what I'm trying to teach people here, that you need to continue to learn all through your life. We need to continue to learn new things and grow and become better people, and I think this is why it's been such a great career for me, because aviation has helped me become organized, really work and keep the knowledge flowing. You know what I'm saying? So I love what we do for a living, and it's just amazing to be able to share this and talk about this experiences with you. And Gabe, we're gonna switch gears here. I
Sure.
want to, because we talk about safety, right? Safety is huge in our industry. Like, unfortunately, there's been people that have, passed on, had some serious accidents that, we've had to learn. And unfortunately, people's lives were lost, but it's also saved the lives of many other people. You know what I mean? So, um, I'm definitely going to share a story. But maybe if there's a story in your background where you had an incident where, safety might have been compromised, or, you had a close call, um, you know, really would help you kind of learn and grow from that experience too. Because I think as all pilots, especially when you're first training, we all have a aha moment, like a little, oh shoot, you know what I mean? Like there's certain airplanes I remember flying. I think it was a Warrior, Piper Warrior, and you have to switch the fuel tanks every like 15, 20 minutes. And I forgot to switch the fuel tank, and I was completely empty on one wing and had all the fuel in the other. And I was like, oh shoot, you know what I mean? Before your engine cuts out, you know what I mean? So things like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you have for me?
Yeah. So, that's probably the best way that I've ever described it, is the things that scare you teach you, right? So
Right?
it's,
Exactly.
and it's a line that I've used during, airline training. It's a line that I've used back in when we were flight instructors,
Hmm.
many, many years ago. But, there's definitely some stories where we have these, as pilots, you're faced with hours of boredom, but you're trained for the 30 seconds of terror
Yes.
that could potentially happen. For
Mhm.
those listening, it's not 30 seconds of terror. 99% of the time, it's very routine, and no one knows that anything has ever happened. That's what the pilot is there for. But it's the road to become, let's call it an airline pilot, is always filled with moments of fear. You have moments of fear, and those teach you, whether it's through little quirks that we have. I used to fly, a little, well, it's a PC-12. So for a lot of people, it's a big airplane. For some people, it's a tiny airplane.
Yeah.
8-seater turboprop, single engine turboprop, we'll call it that.
Yeah. Great,
And
great airplane. I never flown it, but definitely very, um, I guess it's very applicable in many different situations, right? So,
yeah, it's a workhorse of a turboprop world. It was very versatile. Some operators use it for medevac. Some
yeah.
use it for private charter operations.
Mm.
And there were some quirks to it, and I used to kind of create these procedures in my mind, even when it came to fueling. And someone would look, I was flying with an individual and looked at me. He goes, "What are you doing?" And I go, "Well, I'm doing this because this happened, and I'm doing this because that happened to me, and I'm doing this because, oh, that there was a report that this happened. So I'm not. I'm gonna try." And you kind of create these. You create that Swiss cheese model that we know about, right? If
Yeah.
everything lines up, and there is a flaw in your system, and what is now known as our standard operating procedures, that's when an accident happens. So you try and create as tight of a fiction as possible, so that those things don't happen.
Yes.
The story that I'm going to go back to, or I'm going to go to now, is I was flying, prior to where we are now, and even prior to the previous job I had before, I was just flying cargo. and it was actually out of Toronto Island, and we were flying to Hamilton, and everything lined up that night. It was kind of overcast skies, 2,000 feet, so fairly low. I
Was
was
it
a fairly
VFR or IFR?
It was VFR.
Okay.
It could have been IFR,
Mm.
but we were legal VFR.
Yeah.
And yeah, flying over to Hamilton, and it just seemed like everything lined up that night. I was maybe not well rested enough, and I was kind of at that 3,000 hour mark. So that's kind of when you
It's
start to
dangerous.
feel like, oh,
Yeah.
I know what's
Too
happening.
confident.
I think that probably happens at the 1,000 hour mark too, but you get to that 3,000 hour mark as well, and you're like, okay, like I don't need to prepare. Like I know what I'm doing, and
Yeah.
that's a very dangerous mindset. So flying across, and I'm kind of in the Oakville area. It's a very quick flight, and I'm flying a Piper Navajo, so not a very big airplane, but
Yeah. Yeah.
good for
A
cargo.
big, a
And I
big
start,
piston twin, though. You know what I mean? Like it's,
yeah.
you know,
So I start feeling kind of a bit queasy. I'm like, what is that? What's going on? Ended up landing in Hamilton. Not really know like why I got this like strange. It's kind of like a strange odor. It almost smelled like skunk kind of a smell. Get to
oh,
Hamilton, land, and through my kind of like my what I had as my checklist, I would make sure that I always waited to get fueled, watch the fueler, make sure I like specifically asked him what kind of fuel he was putting in because there's stories of people putting Jet A in a piston airplane.
yeah.
And for everyone listening, that's not good. It's like putting diesel in a gasoline powered
Gasoline.
car.
Yeah.
So always waited for him to leave. I'd always like have my little checklist, and I just remember like not really feeling the greatest, but well enough to fly, like legal to fly. So I ended up flying back, and just also I got this like kind of like this nausea, weird feeling. So land, get off the runway, and what that turned out to be was a, a carbon monoxide poisoning. So I got
Wow.
back into our hangar, and I just like I remember like half an hour after that, I was like, oh, I like really don't feel well. Like had to go to the hospital, and they're like, yeah, you have carbon monoxide poisoning. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So just I mean, not cool, but
Oh, I mean,
like
I don't mean
at
to
the
laugh
time,
either but I mean, like, yeah, like, I mean, didn't because it's legal, like, it's mandatory to have like some sort of, indicator that tells you if there is some, you're getting the poisoning, the CO2 poisoning, right? So,
yeah. So I had my flashlight, and it's not something that I looked at. I didn't it didn't register to me that that's what I should look at.
yeah, yeah,
Even though all the indications were kind of pointing in that direction, like I even opened the window because you're low, and
yeah.
you didn't get crazy airflow in that thing. So,
That probably
but
saved your life there too.
everything was right for that night because what happened is it was the middle of winter, and they found a crack in the exhaust. And what happened was they because they put glycol on the runway as antifreeze at Toronto Island that day,
Yeah.
that ended up getting into the exhaust that started burning, and that made it worse. So
Oh,
because of that crack in the exhaust, everything got in, and it was a bad day. But I guess the moral of the story is, I think you create these, you try and create these like fishnets of procedures that make you safe, and
mm,
um, that translates into your career because I think we've all had multiple. So you're going to share a story of times where we've had interesting situations, and you rely on those experiences. So now to this day, even in my bag, I carry a CO2,
yeah,
little $1.99 things that you buy online, right? I carry it.
yeah,
And it's almost like a story piece, right? You put it on the dash, and it's like, why do you have that? Oh, let me tell you a story. But
yeah.
that becomes ingrained in you as a pilot and your procedures,
Yes,
because we've all
100%.
had that.
Yeah, for sure, right? I've had electrical failure where I had to land with no with no comms, so that was kind of interesting. I did make a call, and it was at an uncontrolled airport as well. So I made a call before I was shutting it down. I'm saying, "Okay, guys, I'm going to be flying back into the circuit in about 5 minutes. I'll be coming overhead the field through this direction, joining the downwind. So I'm going to be no radio right now. So look out for me." I literally just
Yeah.
did that, came in. So that was kind of just standard, just kind of using your experience already, even though it's such a weird thing in our industry too. Like I just finished training, and now you're expecting me to go and teach people how to fly. Like I barely know how
Yeah,
to fly myself,
kind of backwards.
right? Exactly, right?
The
So,
most inexperienced teaching the most inexperienced, and the most experienced flying with the most experience. Yeah, it's
right?
I think that's almost a flaw in our industry. I can even share you another
I
story
agree.
of like even flying
Yeah, go
flying
ahead.
airliners and having, doing I was actually doing a check. So, call it you, Frank, you've done line of dock. I was doing the line check and flying into Boston, and we had a flap issue. And it was almost like I've had it so many unfortunately, I've had it quite a number of times
Yeah,
where it's not a normal situation, but it's not an emergency situation.
yeah,
But just that particular event, because everything lined up, right? So having a flap issue, for everyone listening, not really necessarily, um, no cause for concern. You're
yeah.
probably going to come in
It's
a little bit faster, but it's really a
yeah,
non-event.
yeah, exactly.
But for us in the flight deck, it was so, because you're going into Boston from Toronto, because that person beside me was so stressed out. Um, it was like
Yeah.
the first time into Boston, new on the radios.
Oh
Like
man.
it was just everything lined up for like disaster. And I
Yes.
almost, and this is one of those moments where I was like, after the flight, I said to myself, like, learn from this, because I almost foresaw everything that was going to happen. And while I was back, flying at 3,000 feet, as we're starting to come down, tried to put the flaps down, and you get the light,
Yeah.
and I almost like envisioned what the flight from that point on to landing was going to be. And I said, at our current level of stress, just combined stress in the flight deck, this is not going to be a successful landing.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what the outcome of that success was going to be, whether it was going to be, oh, we're going to crash, or whether it was going to be, it just wasn't going to turn out the way I wanted,
Yeah.
I
Hard
wanted it to
landing.
be.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't a risk I was going to take. And then I kind of went backwards. And honestly, I felt like I relied on some of the experiences that I had. And I'm not, not gloating at all. It's just part of the experience that you have as a pilot is, I just stopped and I said, what are we doing? Let's just stop. Like, let's actually just stop. And how do we stop in the air? We do a hold. So we did a couple circles and a hold,
Yeah.
present position hold type of thing.
Mhm.
We just, and for 2 turns, all we did is we just took a breath. I
Yeah.
didn't even run a checklist. We just took a breath. And it turns out that we had actually forgotten a step in our checklist because we were stressed
Yeah.
combined. And I was stressed because I was, the one that obviously wasn't charged, but also I could see that the person was stressed out because the person was scared to lose, or fail that checking event. That would have had implications on their schedule and their career. So we kind of just removed that event from, like, we removed the checking event from it. It's like, hey, the checking event's over. Let's land this airplane. And it
Yeah.
kind of immediately when that happened, ran the checklist properly, came into land, and it became a very successful, non-eventful landing.
Yeah.
And for everyone in the back, it was, oh yeah, we just did two circles and a hold, which really was, 2 minutes, and that 2 minutes could have saved, our lives. So it's kind of
100%.
just like experiences like that make you kind of appreciate the professionals that pilots are,
Yeah.
but also kind of keep you humble, in a way, because you realize that the decisions you make do affect the outcome of the flight. So
I love that story because it's very applicable to everything that it's about taking that time, slowing down, you know what I mean? Taking that breath, because we are going to encounter situations in our life too where, we're going to get a curveball thrown at us. How do we react to it, right? So that honestly was such a great example. Also a great example of, why we train so much and why you do want to have good experience before we get to the airline. You know what I mean? Like, it was a long road for me too, but so many things that I've learned as well that for sure, slowing down. I had a very stressful situation. I might save this one for another time because this one was very scary. Like, really changed, it changed how I ended up with this company too. But I know I'm sorry I'm going to tease you guys with this story, but I was going to use this for a later podcast because it's very significant and especially dealing with hard people. Because instead of taking a breather, we continued with the approach. And what do you think happened, right? Thankfully, not the approach was not good, but we didn't crash. It wasn't horrible. but it could have been. You know what I mean? And all you said, taking 2 minutes, if we taken 2 minutes to kind of regroup or doing overshoot, you know what I mean? And just doing the approach again, it would have lowered the anxiety levels in the flight deck, and also been a very good teaching moment, because that's kind of what I wanted to commend you on that story. What you did for that pilot as well, for the first officer, was give them a great experience in order to deal with an emergency that necessarily wasn't an emergency, right? Because like you said, it's not a big deal. We actually train to land flapless as well. And it's just a couple of just a little modifications to the procedure. But you know what I mean? If you notice that person's anxiety was starting to rise, you know what I mean? You did the best thing and just say, hey guys, hey man, let's take a breather. Let's just ask for a hold. Yeah, ask for a hold, relax. I mean, even hearing the story, it's just such an amazing story to share, because if some of our colleagues do listen to this interview, and I hope so, I hope you guys do, and girls too, everybody. I think it's very important, to realize that cooler heads always prevail, right? We chill, we relax. Such an amazing and great lesson that you taught that first officer that day, and really, those are the experiences that help you become not only just in flying, but you can also apply that to the rest of your life as well, and to situations in your life. So, okay. So I'm going to tell you guys my story that I've been saving for this one. So this one was just absolutely, man, I can't even tell you how crazy. Now this is, mixed in with the skill that I have too. Thankfully I was really good at operating and machinery, because, however, it was irresponsible. And so as a flight instructor, I was always, especially at a small airport, uncontrolled, which means we didn't have, traffic service, air traffic service at all. So we were our own dispatchers slash ATC controllers. So situation awareness, I talked about this in my last episode, where, it's very important to have situational awareness, because not only that, I'm training students. So I have my student that I'm beside. So you're watching what they're doing. So they're not trying to kill you, because that's kind of the mentality you have to have as a trainer. They're trying to kill you every second. So you have to pay attention to your students, obviously, right? So there's a lot going on in that environment for an instructor. So I had a discovery flight, and it's an introduction flight for those of you who don't know. And I was looking at the weather, and I was like, okay, there's a little bit of some weather coming in, but we can squeeze it in. You know what I mean? It wasn't really that bad. It was just, I wouldn't say a squall line, but it was a gust front. And it wasn't like a gust front associated with a thunderstorm, but definitely some rain in behind it. And so I was like, okay, this is a half-hour flight. Get it up there, again, every hour counts, when you're trying to accumulate hours as an instructor. I know you can relate to that, because, our goal is to move up, right? As fast as we could. So anyway, so I take the student up, and the acting supervisor or pilot, I guess the instructor in charge, he kind of gave me a heads up. He's like, I don't think you should be doing this flight. I'm like, oh, we're good, man. We can do it. We can do it. So I get up, we take off, and sure enough, as we're flying, we hit that gust front, and I feel that the little turbulence in the airplane, and I'm like, okay, good. We're in the gust front right now. We're good. And then right when I got past it, it was calm. So then you go on with that first lesson. You teach them about attitudes. And then you let the person, just turn the airplane a couple times, and you return back to the airport, right? Well, during that time, the Class 2 instructor comes on the radio and is like, Frank, return back to base now. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, we're good. We're good. Actually, weather's good here, and I was, the weather was coming in from the west, and I went to the west. So I could see, and you can see rain too, You know what rain looks like from a higher elevation, which is beautiful, by the way. It looks really cool. So you can actually see when clouds are dropping precipitation. So then I thought, you know what? Okay, drop the ego. I said, okay, I'm returning now. You know what I mean? Well, during that time, the gust front now was coming over the airport. so we don't fly too far away from the airport at that point, right? We don't go too far into the practice area. So I come back, and as an uncontrolled, you make your radio calls and you see what the weather's like, and so nobody was answering back. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, I literally just took off 15 minutes ago. I'm just going to set up for the same landing on the same runway. Well, little did I know, the wind shifted, literally at 180. So I set up for the runway. However, the winds are not in my favor anymore. They're not. So we try to land with the wind on our nose, right? Now the wind's on my tail. So I set up to come in for landing, and I remember coming in, and again, I was just really nervous because I knew I was going to get in trouble too. That's another aspect. I knew I was going to get in trouble by my chief flight instructor and by the acting instructor who was monitoring us. So I had that sitting in my mind. Also, just want to make sure that this person, a potential student in the future, want to make sure that they were going to be, So I'm still acting like Mr. Calm, cool, calm, collected, you know what I mean? But the pressure's adding up in my mind, right? So then I'm coming in, and I remember I'm just looking at my ground speed, my indicated airspeed, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm 100 knots, but
why?
Yeah, but so I'm at 100 knots indicated. However, I'm like going over the ground like super fast, and it's still not registering until I'm literally like short final, maybe a couple hundred feet above the ground, and I see the windsock, and it's completely the other way, and it's like, flinging, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? I'm like, well, I'm here. I'm just going to land, which, I'll talk about what I can take from this after. So sure enough, I continue with it, and I'm doing everything I can to try to slow the airplane down. I'm like idle right away, and I'm just kind of like nose up, just trying to get, just trying to create as much drag as I can to slow down. Well, I am not landing. I'm literally ballooning above the runway, and I keep going. And Burlington is a very small airport. Like the runway, I believe, is 3,200 feet, which is 3.2. And it's nice for obviously with, general aviation, but, our airplane probably wouldn't be, we could probably fit in there, but, maybe light, you know what I mean? Well, I guess, Porter flies, on a runway very similar too, right? A little bit bigger, but anyway. So I come in, and literally I'm halfway through the runway, and I still haven't touched down. So I touch down the tires. I literally just get onto the short field landing, so flaps up right away, pull the yoke back as hard as I can, and my feet are pushing the pedals, so I didn't want to lock up the tires in order to pop a tire, because that could have been scary too, so I didn't want to lock the tires up. So, again, this is kind of where my survival instinct started to kick in, and knowing your airplane, knowing the brakes, how sensitive they can be, and their tires, the hydroplaning, all that stuff, you know what I mean? Yes, and rain was coming too. So it was just such an accumulation of, oh my God, it was just crazy. So I used every inch of runway, you know what I mean? And at the end of the runway, there's a ravine. So I'm starting to see the ravine come up, and I'm starting to really shake. So my feet, not only am I trying to push the brakes, but now my feet are starting to shake because I know, but I'm cool. I'm like cool, calm, like, yeah, we got this. And I swear it was like Scully on the audio tapes when he landed the airplane, in the just calm, cool. I was talking like that, but inside my mind, I was freaking out. You know what I mean? So anyway, I remember we literally stopped at the edge of, even the painting marks, you know what I mean? Like, it was crazy, man. It was crazy. So then I'm like, yeah, that was interesting. I turned to the student there. I was like, yeah, that was crazy. And he was like, yeah, wow, man, that's crazy. And at that point, I'm like, making my calls nice, and yeah, Tango Echo Victor, taxing off the runway, backtrack, clear the runway, and my feet were like this the whole time. And I'm trying to taxi, and the way we move the airplane, we taxi with the rudder pedals and in our little Cessnas, and my feet are just completely shaking, right? And all of a sudden, bam, all the rain comes in and the weather, and, I try to get the airplane up into the hangar immediately. And I definitely got a tongue lashing there. Um, I could have handled this so much better. For one, obviously not starting with the flight to begin with. But two, when I recognized that I did have a tailwind, I should have just overshot and just set up properly for the right runway. But I had that get homeitis, which is a human factors, which is very important to talk about too. Like, the psychology of a pilot's mind, right? Like, you know, we want to land, we want to end the flight as quickly as possible. And, when we have that stress or when we have kind of, you know what I mean? Like when we have that, vision in our mind, that's like, I got to get home because I'm getting in trouble. So it was just all this stuff was building up in my mind. And at the end of the day, thank God I'm here to talk about it. And obviously I want to, with future students and, future aviators to hear this story because it's very important, especially if you're in that setting, you're pushing yourself, take it easy, right? And take the overshoot. There's nothing wrong with overshooting. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a stigma in our industry too. It's like, oh, you overshot because then you got to file. There's paperwork behind it, right? Or there's stuff that it's like, oh, more work we got to do. So, obviously, nobody wants to if we don't have to. You know what I mean? So that was something for me that was very important. And then later on in the future of my aviation, I remember telling one of my captains, I'm like, you need to overshoot because I was starting to recognize a very similar situation from that situation. And it was his turn flying. He was flying the approach. And I said, you need to overshoot now. And he's like, no, I can do this. I said, you overshoot now or I'm taking control. You know what I mean? And that's hard for,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, as a first officer telling your captain that because it's like, and I said, there's nothing wrong, man. There's nothing wrong. And as we're in the overshoot, we're doing what we need to do, flaps up, gear up. And, I say, hey, man, there's nothing wrong with this. We're just going to turn around, land, and we're good. Right. And, we had a good conversation after. And these are the experiences that we, hopefully can learn from and then apply again in the future. Right. So it's just,
I think a pilot's life is a checklist. Everything we do is a checklist. You get up and you follow a checklist. So, and just to get homeitis is part of that checklist. We prepare the airplane. It's part of a checklist. Well, we've gotten up as part of a checklist. You prepare the airplane. It's part of a checklist.
yeah.
You take off from A to B. Right. B is that last point of the checklist. So for us, it's almost like seeing it to completion.
Yeah.
And when you don't do it, it's almost like it feels unnatural.
Yes.
Until you break the stigma that, and you said, overshoot implies paperwork. You're absolutely right, it does. But who wants to do the paperwork? Do you want to do it, or does your family member want to do the paperwork? Because that's the stat on an unstable approach. Is you don't go around, you're likely, if not probably, the chances that overshoot, if you that overshoot will save your life.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Exactly.
So
and
it's an excellent point.
yeah, for sure. And I think that's why I wanted to talk about this story because it really is, in our industry too, I'm sure you've met people that do have big egos, you know what I mean? Especially in our industry, right? People that are, they call you on and everything. And it's such, for me, I don't like to do that to people. But that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, I appreciate people that really take, the safety and, just following procedures straight down to the point. And we have to in our industry anyway, right? Because like you said, if we don't, there's very little room for error. There's a very small margin of error, right? I talked about that too in the last episode where, a mistake in our industry usually costs us our lives. So, these experiences are aha moments, I guess you can say, really help us to become better pilots in the future. Now, I did this with a student, so I jeopardized this person's life. But one thing, this is my ego talking right now. One thing that I've always been secure about is my ability to handle the airplane and fly. And, that has been something that I stand by. And it's almost like I certify it, with a stamp. I'm 100% comfortable with it. But again, that's, I don't want to get too cocky with that because, that's where I put people's lives in danger. You know what I mean? So thank God I had those moments to learn from and, just become a better overall person, in that sense. And I love what you said about pilots or about checklists. I think when it comes to, incorporating change and helping, with, just maybe organizing your life a bit. I think it's in a sense, having a checklist internally really helps as well, right? When you do have that checklist, it really helps you kind of, cross the what do you call it? I don't know the expression, dot the I's and cross the T's. There you go.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to kind of just go over that and really explain to yourself that, okay, this needs to be done. Got it. Check. We can move on to the next step, right? So it's
Yeah.
really good. All right. Is there anything else? Any other points that you wanted to discuss as far as the union or anything else?
No, I mean, we can go forever, but
We could for sure, but no, I think generally the message that we talked about was good, and this is again, I appreciate you just taking the time and having this opportunity to catch up with you, even just to see your face again. Like it's nice to see
it's been a while.
it,
Yeah.
right? And it's just nice to see some of my colleagues again. Like I've been meaning to meet up with another colleague as well, and it's just, it's just been hectic, right? And now that I'm doing the podcast, now it's I didn't realize how much work this was really going to be, and but it's really good work. I'm really enjoying this, and again, just you know, connecting again with great people. I think this is just great, putting out positive energy, and maintaining this and relates well to what we do for a living. I think it's fantastic. So Gabe, I really appreciate you taking the time and great to see you again. And I hope whatever's ailing you right now, I hope you're able to get back to work as well, ASAP. And I'm looking forward to seeing you, and hopefully you'll be my line trainer again. By the time I return, I'm sure you'll have your captain
I
seat
hope
back.
I hope so. Yeah, no, thanks. I'm myself eager to be back in the airplane when the time comes, and
Yeah,
I think what I miss the most is what we all kind of drew us to this industry. I just love talking to people. I love the connections we make.
yeah,
Yeah, I love flying.
mm,
I think we all deep down inside love flying. But
amazing.
yeah, I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to get good people back. A lot of our good people back. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's I think there's a lot of hope for the future, a lot of hope for our industry, and just a lot of excitement right now. And yeah, it really just is exciting. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And you touched on it right now. A lot of great people, and I gotta say, like everybody that I met, even in my short stint at on the line, I met a lot of great people. From the crews to other captains, just a lot of great people, and I love what our company does. They look for really good people. Really really good personality. For sure, there's the odd people that get in there. But for the most part, it's just been incredible. And actually, my first weekend, my first pairing was with another guy who had the same name as me as well. So it was really funny, to kind of experience that as well. And we're both like my family is from Spain, and he was from Spain, so it was really nice to kind of have that connection right off the bat. So it made the session so much easier. And your first time on there, I don't care who you are, if you are not in awe or like overwhelmed a little bit, then I don't believe you. You know what I mean? Because I
Yeah,
definitely
you're doing
was.
something wrong.
Yeah, because I like as I say, like sure I might be a little cocky or confident, which I definitely am, but I definitely was, humbled, you know what I mean? Because it was just overwhelming. It's like, oh, what do you say? What are you saying? Oh my God. Like it was just so overwhelming. Nothing like the training in the simulator. You know what I mean? It was so overwhelming.
It's a different environment, right?
Yeah,
You're with your partner, and you're both new, and then you're flying with. It's intimidating flying with someone is there to train you. So it's almost like you don't want to. It's almost like looking up to somebody, right? You
yeah,
don't want to disappoint at the
exactly,
same time. So
exactly.
um, which creates challenges in the flight deck. But I think the role of an effective trainer is to cultivate that environment, that positive learning
Yeah,
environment, and that doesn't just start in the flight deck. That starts well before, right? So,
yes.
um, yeah, I think that's the message. Is I'm excited for having people back. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, awesome.
Um, I was super keen on chatting with you, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I wish you guys the best of luck, and hopefully I can be back, if you want me. So
Yeah, no. Listen, like, aviation is a big part of my life. It's a big part of who I am. And being able to share, we can share more stories. We can even talk, once we do come back and the challenges then now the unions facing and so,
sure.
as well as with the company as well, right? So, just to go back, I wanted to say, to cultivate before we get in the cockpit, right? The trainer's role. Um, that captain made a comment that really made me feel relaxed right before we got into the flight deck. We show up an hour before our flights, 45 minutes, sorry. And then we do a brief, for the first leg. And at that brief, he told everybody, he's like, hey, this is Frank's first time. Oh, he's also Frank, by the way. It was funny. And then he's like, he knows how to fly this airplane. He's been trained. He knows how to fly this airplane like I do. So if you have any questions, any concerns, you can approach him. You know what I mean? And if he doesn't have the answers, he'll come to me. You know what I mean? So but it really helped me relax, and I gotta really commend that. Like, you're right, it does start before that, right? There was no egos involved. There was, you know what I'm saying? He understood that this was my first time and probably realized, especially with the batch of new hirees we were getting, right? Because now they were lower time people, right? And so not a lot of people were familiar with, SOPs and dealing with two crew operations, you know what I mean? So I
Yep.
thankfully had that background a little bit. So it definitely helped me tremendously. But that really kind of relaxed my nerves, and it really set the tone for the 4-day pairing, and I had a great pairing and a lot of great memories from that first time. So great points. Honestly, Gabe, thank you so much. I mean,
Thank you.
you're just a great communicator as well. And I just loved how you discussed your points. So yeah, for sure, I would love to have you back on again. We can talk more, and you know what I mean. We can just see how it's going. You know what I mean. And
Sure.
by that point, maybe I might be on. Maybe I'll have already the notice saying that I'll
Maybe
be
maybe I'll
returning.
have some more information for you. We don't know.
Yeah, for sure. But regardless, I know that things are changing for the better. And yeah, I'm just excited for aviation in Canada and obviously in the rest of the world. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens when it comes to traveling cross borders. And hopefully it's not too bad. Hopefully it's good. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. A lot of optimism, a lot of hope. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks, Frank.
for sure.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, Gabe. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and really appreciate you taking the time to come on and chatting with us. And I'm sure
Thank you.
my fans appreciate it too. All right. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye.